the passive voice. Hello! So the passive voice, it is confusing. Maybe that's just me. Maybe it's just me being dyslexic that makes it confusing. But I get the impression that a lot of other people are also confused by the passive voice, so I'm going to talk about it. So basically, the passive voice is... The problem with it is a lack of clarity as to who is doing what thing, basically. The second problem with it is it makes me get inside every time I come across it. The thing is the rulings that state you should never ever use the passive voice aren't exactly accurate. What you should only ever do with the passive voice is use it on purpose and never by accident. So, okay, it's not exactly clear from what I've said what the passive voice actually is. The passive voice comes across in sentences like, she was dragged across the floor. It's passive because no one is actively doing the dragging. There's a lot of grammatical stuff involved that I don't fully have the capacity to verbalize, because while I have an understanding of grammar that is functional, I would not be able to use the effective and accurate terminology to explain it, because I am a dyslexic person, and it is therefore almost completely inaccessible to me. My wife has tried to talk me through subjects and objects of sentences more times than I care to count, and now she's frustrated and has refused to try again. Because it's just inaccessible. I could not tell you what a subject or an object of a sentence was. So presumably there's some kind of subject and object going on in this passive voice thing, but we're just gonna ignore that. What I'm gonna explain it in is basically the most layman terms possible. Because you don't know who's doing the dragging, it's a passive sentence. No one is actively doing the dragging, therefore it is passive, which is the opposite of active. The thing is that for certain situations, she was dragged across the floor is a really good sentence. It's a really great sentence to have in a horror novel. It's a really good sentence to have if she is your perspective character, as in the character through whom the reader sees the world and the journey and the story, and she doesn't know who's doing the dragging. However, you could also phrase it with that same, oh shit, we don't know who's doing this, as someone dragged her across the floor. Do you see the difference in those sentences? So she was dragged across the floor. Who's doing the dragging? What's happening? Ugh. Someone dragged her across the floor. Oh, who's the someone? What's happening? Something dragged her across the floor. Oh, it's not even a person. And it's about, that's why the passive voice can be really valuable in horror or disorientation scenarios. If she's been hit on the head, maybe she's not aware enough to be able to make the statement of someone or something was dragging her across the floor. That's what I mean by you should only ever, ironically, actively use the passive voice. You should only ever use it on purpose if you want to make that point, if that is a purposeful choice of your narration, that you don't want to give that information of someone or something to the reader, then the passive voice would be accurate and effective there. But in most cases, in the vast majority of cases, in 99% of the cases, you probably want to cut the passive voice. A lot of people say that one of the best ways to find the passive voice is to, if you can insert by zombies at the end, or by kittens, or by, I don't know, nopoodles, I guess, then it's probably the passive voice. She was dragged across the floor by zombies, by kittens, by nopoodles, by a big fat crane, I don't know. And even if that is in the original sentence, she was dragged across the floor by a murderer, or the murderer. Doubling down on this horror thing, aren't we? She was dragged across the floor by the murderer. Again, you want to switch up that sentence so it is the murderer dragged her across the floor. Because as soon as you've done it the other way around, so she was dragged across the floor by the murderer, it's less effective. It doesn't work as well. It doesn't give you that like, woof, of murderer, because most people are too busy going, oh, there's something weird about this sentence. And like, it does trip people up, like, maybe not most people, but enough people that it's like important to fix it, to change it, to only do it on purpose. So, okay, do you really have to go through your entire manuscript again and find all examples of the passive voice? Well, kinda, yeah. But actually what you can do is, if you don't yet have a full manuscript, just do a couple of like flash fiction pieces, short story pieces, where you only use the passive voice. So no one is actively doing anything. The chair was sat on by Melanie. The washing up was done by Steve. The food was placed on the table. And then do some, like, take that piece that you've just written and translate it into an active sense. So, I can't remember any of the sentences I just made. Melanie did something. But like that, Melanie did the thing that I just said that she did, that I can't remember what it was. Steve did the washing up. Just translate each of those sentences into an active voice, because one of the most valuable things you can do as a writer and as a way to improve your writing craft is, on purpose, do it badly, then learn how to correct it. Because ultimately, while it would be lovely to never have this problem and to go, okay, I now know what the passive voice is, I'll never put it in my work, you probably will at some point. It's fairly natural to just sort of accidentally do. And it's super important to know how to fix a problem rather than just expect to not have it. And like, maybe even if you realise as you've been reading through and editing your manuscript, oh shoot, this is the passive voice. I don't know how to fix that. That is also a great time to go and write a whole piece of flash fiction, just because it's short, in the passive voice, and then translate it all out of the passive voice, because then you'll have loads and loads of practice at it, and you'll be able to go back into your work and go, aha, I know how to fix this now. So even if you've come across the problem and you're like, I don't know, I don't have the spoons or the skills to fix this, going away and practicing the theory of fixing it will make it much easier when you come back and actively have to fix it. Actively. Unintentional puns. They're the best one. I hope you found this helpful. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel if you want to see more on Deciphering Writing Advice, how to write LGBT characters and why you should anyway, my self-publishing journey, and other things, all things writing and queer life on this channel. If you want, you can follow me on Instagram. I am at nopoodles, and my kitten is at Notebook Nibbler if you're interested. I'm pointing, she is down there. At Notebook Nibbler if you're interested in just following cats. Keep your eyes peeled for my book, which should be coming out before the end of the year. And if you would like to support me on what I do, there's a link to my Ko-fi account in the description below.